So today's lecture, I'm going to do on creating groove through Indian music theory. And I think just to kind of start this out, I'm going to do like a little tabla solo for everyone. Um, I'm just going to kind of do a quick explanation of the tabla solo, and then I'll probably address some issues with it later in the thing. But in classical Indian music, they work a lot off of what we call cycles. So an amount of beats that things kind of go around and around a bunch of times. And so this one is in a 16 beat cycle. And we're going to be talking a lot about this particular cycle tonight, particularly because in Western music, 16 beat cycle is essentially 4 bars of 4/4. And so it's a great way to kind of access some of these ideas from the lens of something that we're already familiar with in a lot of the music that we associate with. But yeah, it's kind of a different way of approaching it than we do in a Western sense. Also, in this particular tabla solo, it is a theme and variation composition, and so this is very typical in a lot of tabla repertoire, is that you'll have a theme, and that theme is played maybe once or twice, and then after that, each time they go through the cycle, the theme kind of changes just a little bit, but it keeps a lot of aspects of it, and then by the end, you end with what is called a T-high, which is a phrase that's repeated 3 times and finishes on some or the one of the last bar. So I'll play this one, and then we'll kind of jump into things after this. So. So that is kind of like a typical tabla solo that you would see. So now that we're kind of jumping into things, I'm going to get those out of the way so I can have the computer right in front of me. But okay, so within South Indian classical music, so Indian classical music is usually split into kind of two different things. There's the North Indian and there's the South Indian. So North Indian was what I was just playing, which was tabla a lot. South Indian is more, they play an instrument called the mridangam, which is more of just like a big, kind of like a tabla, but just on the side and one drum. And in South Indian music, they use syllables that aren't necessarily connected to a drum, and this is why I'm using the South Indian theory of things as opposed to the North Indian theory. The North Indian theory, all the syllables that they used are connected to the drum. So if I play in North Indian music, if I play that, we call that gay, we call that tune, na, da. Each stroke has a different syllable that's associated with. South Indian music, all the syllables are the same no matter what instrument you're playing, and so it's a really great system for translating it to any sort of instrument or any sort of tradition. So I really love using this South Indian theory, particularly in using stuff with jazz and groove music and different stuff like that, because it just translates really well. So I'm going to share my screen here, and what we see here, this is kind of how we're going to break down the syllables. So for a grouping of one, we're going to call that ta. Typically, you're not going to see something just be like ta 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 and just repeat it over like that a lot, but you'll see that in certain contexts. The next for two, Taka. So if I was to play that like on the tabla or any instrument, you know, Taka could be like Taka, Taka, Taka. Right? Just like 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. So instead of saying 1, 2 or 1 or 1, 2, 3, we're using these syllables. Particularly what I like about using these syllables is a lot of times in Western music, we count things as like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And there's not really a groove to utilizing that sort of language. You know, you get really caught up. You're breathing. You're not breathing a lot when you're saying these things, and it doesn't really give context to what the feel of something would be. And to me, I feel like using these syllables really do that. So going on to three is takite. So takite, 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 takite. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Takite, 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 takite. Right? So you can imagine if you're playing something that's in a 3/4 rhythm, right? You could go takite, 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 or if it's a faster one, takite, 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 takite. You can use this kind of as a framework for stuff. Almost in the same sense that if you listen to like Cuban music and they use this idea of a clave, a lot of times when I'm working on stuff that utilize different groupings, I utilize this almost as my own internal clave. The next is Takadimi, which is going to be our 4, right? Takadimi, 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 Takadimi. Takadimi, 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 Takadimi. Those are, you know, the most common ones that we probably are going to see. And as you're going to see in the rest of these, all these end up becoming combinations of 3s and 2s, or sometimes we'll use the 4 as a combination of 2 2s. So those are kind of like our core, the first 4 ones that build. These are really the core building blocks to any sort of rhythm, no matter what tradition or style that you're playing. Any sort of rhythm is going to use these kind of core elements. So now once we get into higher numbers like 5, I have 2 different examples of this, right? The first one, takatakite, I'm breaking that into 2 and 3. So if we take a grouping of 2 and we take a grouping of 3 and put that together, takatakite, 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 that makes up 5. Conversely, if we switch that around and do the next example, which is 3 and 2, taki to taka, 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 taki to taka. It gives us a very different feel of how we can experience 5. And, you know, a lot of times in Western music, I found that like once we get into these odd groupings of like 5, 7, people kind of just play it one way. You know, like I'd say 95% of of jazz tunes that I find in 5 are 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 3 1 2. And you don't actually hear as much of 1 2 1 2 right? You don't hear that quite as much. So this kind of opens up the lens to seeing those things differently. We move on to 6, and I have 2 things written here, but actually I'm going to kind of expose that as 3. So the first one, Takadimi Taka, I'm thinking of that as a grouping of 4 and a grouping of 2, right? So Takadimi Taka, Takadimi Taka, Takadimi Taka, Takadimi Taka. So that's one way that we could feel our 6s. You do the opposite of that. So 2 plus 4. Taka takadimi, taka takadimi, taka takadimi, taka takadimi, taka takadimi, taka takadimi. Like that. And the one that I don't have on here, I didn't put it on because it's actually just the combination of 2 3s. But it's an important way to group 6, because a lot of times you'll find something in 6 8 and you might feel that in a 3, like taki to taki to taki to taki to taki to taki to 1 2 3 4 5 6 1 2 3 4 5 6 taki to taka to taki to taka to taki to taka to, like that. And so, you know, you can divide that in a bunch of ways, right? Taki to taki to taki to taki to takadimi taka, takadimi taka, takadimi taka, taki to taka to taki to taki to takadimi taka, takadimi taka, takadimi taka, takadimi taka. You could have those things actually coexisting with each other too, which kind of makes for fun polyrhythmic cross rhythms that are happening. The next we have our groupings of 7, and the two ways I have grouped for this are 4 3 and 3 4. So the first one, 4 3, takadimi taki to 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 takadimi taki to. That's, once again, when we're talking about jazz or a lot of modern music that uses odd time signatures, that's the grouping that you probably see more often than not, is 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 1 2 3 4 1 2 3. It gives that sense of having almost a backbeat at the beginning because you're giving that 4 there. The other aspect of it is the 3 and 4. So taki to takadimi, 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 taki to takadimi da. Right? It gives it a little bit of a different feel. You know, whether you're playing a groove in 7 or composing something in 7 or whatnot, these are aspects of the grooves that you want to really make sure that you're navigating, and make sure that if you're playing in a band that everybody's on the same page, that everybody's thinking 4 3 or 3 4. But also it can be a fun thing where if the band's playing 4 3, maybe you take a second to play something as 3 4 just to give it a rub in some sort of way. It might give it some sort of, you know, interesting feel in some way. The last one that I have on here is 8. And obviously we could do that as 4 and 4, but I kind of turned it into just a long cycle just to give it that like longer 8 feel. And this we call Takadimi Takajonu, Takadimi Takajonu, Takadimi Takajonu, Takadimi Takajonu, Takadimi Takadimi Takajonu, Takadimi Takajonu, Takadimi Takajonu, Takadimi Takajonu. we can also, there's, you know, once we get into 8, like I said, higher numbers, we can get into more groupings. I didn't write those out on here, but we could do 3-3-2. Taki to taki to taka, taki to taki to taka, taki to taki to taka. We could do 3-2-3, taki to taka, taki to 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 taki to taka, taki to, or we could do 2-3-3. Taka taki to taki to taka taki to taki to taka taki to taki to taka taki to taki to. Those are all actually, when you get into like especially a lot of world music, those are very common. You see those kind of long, long, short, long, long, short kind of feel that happen with things. I know I'm kind of going through this fast, and my hope is not that, you know, you're going to pick up every single thing that I'm saying to you today, but it's that you're grabbing something from this, and that you're able to take something to whatever instrument you're playing, you know, whether it's drums or whether it's piano or whether you're a composer or a singer, that you can kind of bring these back to the things that you're doing. So that being said, I want to talk now, like I was saying at the beginning, about this idea of cycles. So, like I said, that the tabla solo that I played at the very beginning was in a 16-beat cycle, and as Western musicians, 4 bars of 4/4, right? That's the easiest way for us to relate to 16, right? 4 plus 4 plus 4 plus 4, we get 16. So within that, we want to kind of do sort of what I just did with those smaller numbers, but now we have bigger numbers to deal with, right? So we're going to break down how to kind of feel a bunch of different groupings within larger contexts. So the first thing that I actually want to show you all is a counting system that I learned from some of my teachers, and this works particularly well with groups of 16. And you take your hand, okay? And your thumb is going to be the counting mechanism, okay? So on each hand, you have 1, 2, 3, 4 spots, right? So, or sorry, not on each hand, on each finger, I should say. So you have 4 spots, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. You go to the next one. 5, 6, 7, 8. The next one. 9, 10, 11, 12. And then 13, 14, 15, 16. So for me, I found this as a great method for me to be able to try out ideas, to be able to sing things over top, and have a mechanism, sort of my own metronome, where I'm keeping track of things, and I can almost get it to the point where I'm not thinking about what's happening here, but I can see at the end, did I come out at the end of those 16 beats or not? So yeah, so let's just all kind of do that together for a second. So I'll give 4 and then we'll do it. So 1, 2, ready, go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, right? So yeah, this is going to be a great method, and I'm going to keep referring back to this method as we're going through this. But the one thing I also wanted to just kind of note about the difference between this Indian approach that I'm going from and a lot of Western music is when you have 4 bars of 4 in a Western context, 98% of the time you are addressing the top of the beat or the sum of the beat every 4 beats, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, right? That's what's happening a lot of times in Western music. And so even though we're feeling it as 4 bars of that, we're tied into this smaller grouping of 4, but just doing that smaller grouping of 4 times. And what we're trying to access within these cycles within Indian music is, let's take that full 16 beats and let's see what exists within that and all the possibilities that kind of that we can navigate in that. So I have a bunch of videos that I'm going to kind of show you of me playing these different grooves on the drum set. that will hopefully kind of help with the understanding, and a couple musical examples also. But we are going to start with kind of what we just ended with 8, right? Because that's the most common thing, and we can find some different groupings through that stuff too. I'm going to give this in 2 different examples of things. In this one, I'm going to show kind of as a funky groove, and then also as like a swing groove. And there, the groupings I'm going to have in this are 3-2-3 and 3-2-2. And in the funk groove, I do both of those. I start with the 3-2-3, and then halfway through I switch to 3-3-2, I believe. And then the swing groove, I think I just do the 3-3-2. So this is just kind of a way for us to kind of contextualize these numbers and not just have them be a theoretical thing in our minds. So here we go. So yeah, just right there, I just want to point out, like, these are very common grooves that we've probably all played at some point, right? You know, especially like, I mean, we were talking about in the first class, the New Orleans stuff. Like, a lot of that is 3-2, 3-3-2, 3-3-2, right? That's a very common thing that you see. You see this. Honestly, you see this in Arabic music, you see this in Indian music, you see this in African music, you see this in different forms of Asian music, whether it's Indonesian or Chinese music. You see this in American music. Honestly, I think this is probably the most common breaking up of rhythm, other than 1-2-3-4, 1-2-3-4, or 1-2-3, 1-2-3, 1-2-3. This is probably the next common thing that we see. And here's now an example, kind of as a swing rhythm. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Right, so like even there, like you hear that New Orleans feel in there, right? That kind of swung, That's a very, very, very common thing. So the next grouping, I just wanted to kind of address 5s a little bit, because they're just probably the next most common like odd meter grouping that we see. So 5s, I'm going to play the first 2 examples are going to be of a 2-3, and I'm going to play that as a funk and then as like an Afro-Latin kind of groove. And then I'm going to go to a 3-2, and I'm going to do the same thing, a funk and an Afro-Latin groove. So this is 2-3 coming up here. Right, so I'm just going to kind of remind us of the syllables that we were using that, right? Takataki to 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 takataki to. So I'm going to play the next beat and try and see if you can hear those syllables in what I'm playing in the next example. Okay, and then I'm gonna do the same thing with 3-2. So once again, to remind you of the syllables that we're thinking of we're thinking of a 3, takita, and a 2, taka. Takita, taka, takita, taka, takita, taka, takita, taka, takita, taka, ta. Like that. now is an Afro-Latin groove. All right. So yeah, so as you can see here, 11s are what we got next. So now we're getting into bigger numbers, right? And what I have here, here's a couple different combinations that I came up with. But honestly, you could come up with some other things. 4-4-3 could be an 11. 3-3-3-2 you could do. You know, we could kind of come up with a bunch of stuff, but this is kind of my favorite favorite grouping of 11s, and I'm gonna show a couple examples on here, and then I'm actually gonna play a quick musical example so that we're also not just hearing drum set grooves, but we're hearing kind of how it can apply to things. So here is we're gonna start with a 5+6, and in this 5+6, it's gonna be the 4+2. So Taka taki to Takadimi Taka is our grouping there. Taka taki to Takadimi Taka. 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 Like that. Right, the next example, we are just changing that 6 into two groupings of 3, like I was talking about earlier, right? So now we have taka taki to taki to taki to taka taki to taki to taki to taka taki to taki to taki to taka taki to taki to taki to. It gives it a much more dotted feel than the one before that felt more 8th note based. Right? It's like that almost gives you a sense of like a shuffle, right? Right? So I'm going to now bring up an example. This is a song that I wrote over the pandemic, and I wrote it for my daughter, who was just born about 6 months ago. This is a section that it starts out in 5, and then it goes into this 11 grouping. So when you hear the vocals go from, so when they're singing words, it's going to be in the 5 section, and when they go to just kind of like a more of a melodic sort of thing with the rest of the band and the flutes, then that is going to be the section that is in 11. So here we go. There we go. All right, so yeah, so that's kind of that, just how you can use that in more of a band sort of context. One of the other things that I think is really great about utilizing these sort of systems is that for me, my goal in grouping things in this way and utilizing this stuff is that I don't want odd meters to feel like odd. Like, you know, we call them odd meters, and a lot of times when people address odd meters, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It just feels like 4 with a skip or something like that, right? And we want to actually make these things really musical and make them feel like they groove. You know, there's a reason when you go to the Balkans, or you study Indian music or any other, you know, Persian music that uses a lot of fives and different stuff like that, where you listen to that stuff and it grooves really hard. You know, you're not feeling this mechanical sort of thing that we've all kind of been brought up to feel odd meters as. You're kind of navigating things a little bit more as a groove, and we want to feel things in that way, right? You know, in the Balkans, they dance to odd meters, right? Like, they're like, oh yeah, 17, cool, bring it. Like, we can dance to this. It's great. So this is, you know, we want to be able to kind of access music in this way. We're going to go to my next example is in the idea of 15, and I particularly like 15 as a groove because there are so many possibilities with this, and I'm not even going to address all of them in this right now, but I'm going to actually address quite a few of them. And so I'm going to give my first two examples are going to be of more of a groove, and then an example of swing, and we're going to divide this as 7 and 8. So so our syllables would be Takadimi, Takita, Takadimi, Takajonu, Takadimi, Takita, Takadimi, Takajonu. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I'll talk about the other ones after that. But yeah, so that's how we're going to feel this one. Now is a swing. So yeah, so that's our 7 and our 8 kind of combined together. Those can almost feel like you're playing in straight 4/4, because those phrases are so long, right? You have 4, 1, 3, and then 2 4s essentially, right? So you can almost give the illusion that things are in 4/4 with that kind of thing. The next thing is you can do 3 5s, right? And so now we just got through with something that felt almost like it was in 4/4, and now we're making it feel like it's in straight 5, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Or 3 Takatakitas. Takatakita, 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 Takatakita. If we do the math, if we do 5 3 times, that also means that we can do 3 5 times, right? So this is what's fascinating about 15 for me is, you know, we just got done making it feel like 5. The one before almost felt like it was 4. Now we can make it feel like it's in groupings of 3, right? We can give it almost like a shuffle feel, right? Takita, 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 takita. And it gives us this solid base of what to work with. Now this can almost feel like quarter notes with triplets, right? Takita, 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 takita. And we're still in the same time and signature of 15. And I have 2 examples. I'm doing one kind of more as like a shuffle, and then one more as like an Afro-Cuban sort of thing. now's the Afro-Cuban. Okay, I'm going to get a little analytical here, but the next one that I'm going to do is essentially the 3 groupings of 5 and the 5 groupings of 3 all simultaneously. So now we have a 3/5 polyrhythm that we're having going on right here. And then this last one is going to be a grouping of 6/4/5, just to give us a very different feel of anything else that we've done. So Takadimi, Taka, Takadimi, Taka, Takita, Takadimi, Taka, Takadimi, Taka, Takita, Takadimi, Taka, Takadimi, Taka, Takita. That's a way that we can kind of feel that. So. Okay, so yeah, so now we're getting back to our idea of the cycles, right? The 16-beat cycle. And so we worked on our fingers, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. And this is how I want, all of you to kind of, if you can, while you're doing this, try and follow these things by utilizing your fingers here. So I'm starting off with our basic 4/4/4/4 that I was saying is most common in music, right? So follow that along. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. You can use our syllables. Takadimi, Takadimi, and just do that 4 times and see if you can follow along with it. Okay, so yeah, so that's what we're all most familiar with, right? Like 99% of pop songs are like that. We can now get a little bit more creative with this, right? And think outside of the box. We have 16 beats. What are some other combinations that we can do with this? One that I like is 5/5/6. So Takadimi, Takita, Taka, Takita, Taka, Takadimi, Taka, right? Doing that sort of grouping. So that's what we got here. Okay, we can do 6/6/4 is the next one. So Takadimi, Taka, Takadimi, Taka, Takadimi. That's another way that we can phrase our 16-beat cycle. Okay, and our last example that I'm going to show for this part of things is going to be 4/5/7. So Takadimi, Taka, Takita, Takadimi, Takita. Boom. That gives us our 16 beats right there. So the next thing that we're going to kind of go with, so right now we have a 16 beat cycle, and in Western terms, we're gonna base that off of the idea of the quarter note, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4. We're thinking quarter notes, right? Well, what happens if we want to have more options of things to do here? Well, in a Western sense, what happens if we turn that into eighth notes? If we have 4 bars of 4 4 and we turn that into eighth notes, how many eighth notes do we have in there? We now have double the amount, right? So 32 is what we're now working with. So that gives us infinite more options, right? We can break that into a bunch of different things. And so, I'm not going to go through every single way of doing that, but I'll give you kind of, a couple of different examples of how we can kind of see that. So once again, I'm going to start out showing you kind of the normal speed of things, and I'm going to show this as kind of like a swing kind of feel, right? Yeah, so 8, 8, 8, 8 is what we're thinking now. Okay, that's typically what you're hearing, right? That's our 4 bars of 4 4 kind of as eighth notes, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, kind of phrase like that. So now what I want to do is I want to make it feel like it's pretty much in groupings of 7 the whole time, but we're going to have to kind of cut something off short at the end to make that the 32. So if we do 4 7s and 1 4, that's going to give us our 32, right? So if we're following on our fingers, we can go Takadimi taki ta Takadimi taki ta Takadimi taki ta Takadimi taki ta Takadimi ta. See, that gives us those things. So let's all kind of try that together. So I'll give 4 up front, and then let's all try and go along with our hands. So a 1, 2, ready, go. Takadimi taki ta Takadimi taki ta Takadimi taki ta Takadimi taki ta Takadimi Takadimi taki ta Takadimi taki ta Takadimi taki ta Takadimi taki ta Takadimi da. Right? This is where it gets actually really fun and using your fingers and kind of navigating like, oh, I'm playing 7s the whole time, but I'm still keeping track of where I am within this 16 beat cycle that we came up with, right? So here's an example on the drums. And now I'll show it as kind of a couple different grooves. So I'll have like an Afro-Latin thing and then a funk thing next, so you can kind of hear the differences. Then as a funk kind of thing. Cool. And I'm going to give one more example in this double speed, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to make it feel like 5. And so we're going to have 5 5s plus a 7, and that's going to get us our 32, right? and I'll do the same thing. I'll do one as a swing and one as an Afro-Latin. But yeah, if we look at our hands again, just so we can kind of do that. Taka taki to 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 takadimi taki to. That's going to get us to there too. So. Okay, so I have stuff prepared for the next two speeds that we're gonna do, and I just want to show the next speed. I have this all on kind of a YouTube link if anyone ever, like wants to kind of look at it, or get together with me one-on-one and we can talk about some of these things, because this stuff is just, it's meant to be kind of germs of ideas in a way. It's not necessarily meant to be played super strictly, but it's meant to be creative. And with all this stuff, I'm showing different grooves with it, but you could solo with these ideas. If you're trading fours with a drummer or anyone else, like you might throw these ideas in, and it's in a 4/4 context. It's a great way to kind of make things feel like they're over the bar line and you're playing in this fluid sort of way. So the last one I'm going to show today is triple speed, and that's essentially using triplets as our bass. And so that's going to be now a 48 beat cycle that we're thinking of. Obviously, we have a lot more that we can kind of work with. And so the first one is if we just do 6/8 in that's going to work, right? So if we're thinking like triplets, so triplet, here we go. Takadimi, taka jonu, 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 da. That gets us back to the sum, right? With 6 of those. So I'm going to share that really quick. Oh, and this I'm actually giving kind of our regular shuffle kind of 4/4 bar sort of thing first, so that you can all kind of get the context of where that comes from a little bit. So we're starting with just in regular with a metronome, so you can kind of hear how it feels. And here we go. All right. The next one I'm going to show is going to be 6 7s plus a 6. So if we're following on our hands again, we'll go 1, 2, ready, go. Takadimi taki to 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 taki to taki to da. And that gets us to there again. Once again, I'll give, this is going to have just kind of a regular 4/4 shuffle groove first, and then I'll go into it. Okay, and then the last one I'm going to share with you is going to make it feel in 5s, and this is going to be 9 5s plus a 3. So once again, if we are doing this, I'll give us a 1, 2, ready, go. Taka taki to 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 taki to doom. And that kind of makes our way out there too. Also with the metronome and the thing before is that. All right, so the last section that I was going to show that we'll just kind of leave for right now was going to be more of a 16th note based thing, right? And that goes to 64 beats, which bunches of more options kind of show up with that. And so really what I wanted to kind of showcase through all of this was that we can take something that's so normal as 4 bars of 4/4 that we play, almost every day or every gig. I mean, there's probably not a gig that most of us don't play 4 bars of 4/4 at some point. We can find, just different ways to group this stuff. These are all just kind of ideas to stew with, whether it's, you want to compose with them, whether it's you want to create your own grooves with them, or whether it's something to improvise off of. Kind of the world is limitless with a lot of this stuff, and today's lecture was really just to kind of give a starting framework of how to kind of utilize these things. But I'm hoping that each one of you kind of picked at least one nugget of information from here that you could kind of pull from and just say, oh, that's something that I never thought of, or a way that I could approach things that might be a little bit different. And that was really the main goal in this. So with that, I'm going to kind of conclude what I'm saying, but like if anyone has any questions, I would love to kind of sit and chat for a second. So
Are those syllables, you said they're universal in South Indian music for every instrument?
yeah, in South Indian music, most of the musicians, they have to learn all of these syllables and all these different groupings of these syllables and compositions that use these syllables honestly before they even touch their instruments, a lot of times. And uh, so the South Indians, I think their system was, we're going to have one system that everybody can kind of conform to in terms of syllables, and because of that, everyone's going to learn these same syllables, and then you bring them to your own instrument, and then you can apply them to your own instrument. The North Indian music, like the tabla and sitar and those sort of instruments, a lot of those have just, yeah, their own syllables, which are also awesome, amazing syllables. But like for instance, on tabla, I could play five a couple different ways. I could play dati dagina, dati dagina, dati dagina, dati dagina. Or I could do dage tete tete, 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 or get a nagaga, get a nagaga, get a nagaga, get a nagaga. There's a bunch of different phrases that you can use that apply to that. Whereas in the South Indian music, it's great for kind of more of a universal thing because it is just like phrase, and you don't have to necessarily connect it to a sound or anything on an instrument. That's kind of up to the person who is navigating these things to put your own creativity into it.
Is the terminology the same though? Like, is 16 beats called Teamtal still?
Yes, a lot of times, and there's also like within within these different traditions, there's other 16 beat cycles that are even 4/4/4/4 that are called different things, and a lot of that has to do with the base of they call it a Taka in Indian music, and that's so like in Teen Tall for tabla, our Taka is da din din da da din din da na tin tin na de de din din da, and that's kind of how that's phrased, and that's the bass. So like if there's a tabla player that's playing with a sitar player, and the sitar player is improvising, the tabla player is playing the teka, or essentially the groove, right? So it's almost equitable to like if you were to say like, hey, can you play like a swing thing on this, or like give me that like Billy Higgins kind of boogaloo thing or whatever. It's almost akin to that. So yeah, so it's kind of akin to that, and there's improvisation within that. So like on a take, like I wouldn't just play only that, but I could go da din din da da ge din tricka din din da na ge din din ta kita tere kita din tricka din din da. You know, I could do something like that, but you're still navigating that framework of da din din da. And so yeah, so you might find some other 16-beat 4/4/4/4s that might use a different structure of what the drum is playing along with it. So
So, Trevor,
mhm.
when your teachers taught you this in the first place, you had to be able to sing it before you got on a drum, right?
In most cases, I mean, not every. Some of these are things that I kind of came up with in my mind a little bit. But yeah, a lot of this stuff does start with vocalization first. So when I first started learning the tabla, I mean, honestly, that's what you have to do when you first start learning the tabla, because it took me like a couple months to just even get a good sound out of the instrument. And so, so being able to vocalize these things was the way that I could engage with the material. But when I learn material on tabla, like when I'm with my teachers, they won't play the thing on the drums. They'll say, okay, this next variation that we're doing is going to be din da 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 te da 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 dina da ti da gena da gena dina gena ter dina gena da ti da gena da da gena da ti da gena da ti da ge tuna gena, and then you go, okay, whatever, you know, the rest of it. But yeah, so that's how they teach it by saying these things first. And so the more that you learn different compositions and learn all the different strokes, it actually becomes quite easy for you to hear someone, you know, say a couple of syllables and say like it's din dagena dati dagena din dagena dati dagena din dagena dati dagena din dagena dati dagena dati dagena. And so, you know, for me it's yeah, you're singing that stuff along while you're doing it. And, you know, the thing that they preach over and over is that if you don't learn to sing the syllables, you're going to have problems when you're trying to play this stuff. And you're going to have problems with memorization and learning this stuff. And yeah, the memorization aspect of it is really helpful when it comes to that. So, yeah, really the purpose of this is not to necessarily say like this is this abstract Indian system, like just think about it, but it's to take some of these ideas and apply it to the things that you do.